Hey everybody, I'm Jordan
And I'm Josh.
with PDQ.com. Today we're talking onboarding.
We are.
And I'll be honest, when I started this, I thought to myself, I'm just going to create complete automation beginning to end. It's going to be great. And then I started talking to you about the caveats for our system, what we can and can't do. And we had a lot of gotchas that were unique. And I thought about it, and it's probably unique everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, it is fully automated, but showing our very nuanced onboarding probably isn't going to be helpful as much as it would be showing the foundational automation.
So, there's no catch-all I can say this will automate everything. We can give you the starting point, and you have to go and make it work with your various components.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully this gets you thinking about it, helps you get some automation done, but I can't give you a, hey, run this, everything's automated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think of like a IT professional's day-to-day, how much of your time is spent either, onboarding, provisioning access to things. If you can free up as much of your time there as you can, you have time to do all of the other things.
It's I think the important part of IT is find the things you don't like doing and make them do themselves.
Love it.
Because you're just going to like your job more if everything you don't like does itself and you can just focus on what you do like doing. You're happier, then everyone's happier because no one likes a grumpy IT person.
Yeah. I think, so like one of the first things that comes up when you talk about onboarding is someone's going to need some hardware.
Yep.
Right? And usually you get hardware, we're going to end up talking about imaging.
Yeah, so there's a couple ways for this one. There's some computer manufacturers out there where you can have them, they put on an image and ship it directly to a remote employee.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that's going to come free of bloatware, no matter how much money you pay. But I mean, if that's what you have, that is one way you can have that automated. But for hardware specifically, at some point there's got to be communication. Something comes in, you have to email whoever's in charge of the hardware and say, hey, I need this computer, and let them take over the imaging.
Yeah. So I think our very obvious segue here is probably to Glenn with Smart
That's
Deploy.
Right.
Tell us how to image.
Well, the first thing you do when you're imaging is you don't trust the current state of the machine at all, whether it's a brand new one or whether it's being returned from a previous employee. Just don't bother with it. Don't log into it. Don't try installing an agent on it. Just boot it to something external. Then you're in Windows PE, and you can just apply your image with, you could use Smart Deploy for this. This is a PDQ.com product for imaging purposes. And we do have an agent-based re-imaging solution as well. You can install a client on it and perform a console-initiated deployment. But I don't like to do that for brand new machines because I don't want to deal with whatever trial antivirus version they threw on there for me. I can definitely confirm the bloatware thing is real. And that can get tricky if you're trying to work around that. So easiest thing to do is boot it to something external, USB stick or a DVD if you're going old school, or you can Pixie boot it with a WDS-based boot image. So you put your boot image on your Windows Deployment Services server, Pixie boot the device. Ideally, it's got an unattended answer file, so it's going to walk through the entire process of mapping a network drive, selecting your image, and applying the settings that you've specified. And as Josh said, take the tests you don't like doing. Assuming I think that was Josh that said that. Take the tests you don't like doing and make them do themselves. That's the way to go. So once your machine is ready, you can basically, the degree to which you customize this in advance will depend on how much granularity you need across your various images. So you might have separate images with separate software loads per department, per role, or you could have a standard image that has, let's say, all the apps that are in common across your company. So commonly that's going to be Windows, it might be VPN software, although sometimes that can be a bit dodgy, including it on your reference VM before capture. So your mileage may vary on that. May want to install that as a part of a post-deployment task or application pack, or you can push it out with PDQ Deploy as well. So pushing out different groups of applications can be done afterward as well. So you might just have Windows and Office on your base image, and then push out department-specific applications from there. And that is about it. Did you guys have any questions?
So it kind of got to it at the end. Do you think it's better for images to just have like one gold image that everything applies and then you add onto it after, or is it better to have like this is HR because I guess I don't know how difficult it is to update image per department or how much time that's going to take if you have a bunch of them.
Well, if your reference VM can only with Smart Deploy, we use a virtual reference machine, and when we capture the virtual reference machine, we leave it in a state where it can continue to be updated after that. Now, I'm gonna caveat that slightly here. When I say you can update your VM endlessly, that is not to say that it's impossible for an update to break your VM or render it unusable. So keeping regular backups of your VM in its most recent known good state, definitely a good practice. Before you fire it up, just back up a copy of the VM, back up a snapshot, do something to save the state of that VM before you do anything to it. We don't recommend installing Windows feature updates, which is not really an issue with Windows 10 anymore because they've kind of reached the end of, I believe they've reached the end of the semi-annual channel updates for those. Likely to continue to be an issue with Windows 11. When you install an in-place upgrade, which is what those feature updates are, it is running sysprep on the VM. It is performing a more dire sort of task on it that may or may not allow sysprep to repeat when sysprep runs at deployment time, which is what Smart Deploy does. We apply the image and then we run sysprep on the endpoint itself. So it leaves the reference VM in a state that can be updated for the operating system or the applications. And then we save sysprep for the endpoint itself, where you're not going to have to run sysprep more than once after that anyway. Now, as for your question about whether it's easy to update separately for per department, the answer is it depends. Because the reference VM can only exist in a single state, it's not really practical to have a reference VM with multiple software loads on it. It's only going to have one current software load on it. I've seen customers who create a base image that just has a basic set of apps on it, capture that, and then they add additional apps to it that are specific to a particular department, then they capture it again, and then they've got two separate images. The problem with that is you can update the VM from its current state with all of those extra apps that are department specific, but if you wanted to update it from its previous state where it had fewer apps, well, that VM doesn't exist anymore. So, people will clone VMs, people will make copies of them. Any of those processes is fine as long as it doesn't harm the underlying VM or it doesn't do anything to the underlying VM that's going to render it unfit for capture and unfit for deployment. As long as you keep the VM in a pristine state, you can keep right on updating Windows and updating applications for as long as you need to. Keep capturing it. You can do that on a regular cadence, recreate your answer files to point to your updated image, update your media, and then you're all set to make sure that anybody who's getting a brand new machine in your organization, Joe, when he's picking up his new laptop, is going to get the latest version of the image, and he's not going to have to wait for a bunch of updates to install once he connects to the internet for the first time.
Fantastic.
All right, so maybe this is just my preference. It sounds to me on this one, you have your gold image, you keep everything up to date on the system side, so they get the latest image on that.
Yeah.
But maybe on software, that's where I use Deploy.
Yeah.
I'm biased on account of we work here, but
That's fair to be biased in that way, because I think Deploy is a great product, and I think it goes hand in hand with that.
And in that case, it's easier to have large groupings of package based on department. So if we create just one called sales, if we can bring up our screen share here.
Yeah. So, I think we're going to leverage nested packages here, right?
Yeah, nested packages. So this is where you can go in and you find like everything sales need. In this case, obviously these are.
Last I checked, sales definitely lived in putty.
We need KeyPass and putty. But you can just have everything here. And this way, when new updates of the software come out, it will automatically update. It comes in. What you are going to need is a way for this to, like, how do we know that the machine needs to be sales, that this package deploys to? You could do that either by a collection that specifies it, whether your naming scheme contains the department they're in some way or some variation of characters, or if your departments are separated by OU and Active Directory.
Yeah.
You can do it with that one. So there's a lot of things. You just have to find a way to separate those machines based on department, and then the right package that updates everything will be done. That way, you get the latest image, Deploy takes over, they get the latest software, so they can hit the ground running when they start.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to go at it. I like the Active Directory method, and I think it's going to kind of lead into where we're going to go for the rest of this webcast is the more organized you are in Active Directory, and the more in sync you can be with other back office departments, like HR, finance, on naming schemes and organizational structure, the more you're going to be able to automate so many processes for your organization.
And you mentioned one thing that we do, which I thought was pretty cool, is you have a automated where it sends out an email. Someone new has started in the email and said, "Hey, pick your peripherals."
Yeah, so that's one of the things that particularly with our onboarding process is as someone joins PDQ.com, we send them an email, and it's, "Hey, what tools do you need to be effective at your job?" Right? Very much like a car mechanic might bring their own set of tools. Anyone that's going to come work on a computer for 8-9 hours a day, we're going to give them the best tools that they need. So it's, what monitors do you want? Are you a PC and Mac person? What is that keyboard that you really like or that mouse you really like? What headset do you want? And so that's one of those nuances that we've kind of tried to automate, but still have like that personal touch in there.
So I'm curious, do you just let the person there on site decide themselves if they want to go super cheap or super expensive, or do you just throw it out there like with a budget limit?
We just throw it out there, and we see everything from very expensive to a very, very cheap, right? And the only thing we ask is like, hey, give us a link that we can get on Amazon. Don't find some like small retailer, niche retailer. If you can give me a good reason, I'll go buy it. But we've had to ask some new hires like, hey, that $8 keyboard that you picked out on Amazon, let's get a little better because I know that's going to be a ticket here in 2 months when your keyboard doesn't work.
So do you more often see the too expensive or the too cheap?
We fairly regularly see too cheap, and we're kind of like coaching people, hey, let's get something a little nicer. You're going to live on this thing.
It's an interesting mindset, isn't it? Where people just go straight to, well, I don't want to intrude.
Yep.
I do want to intrude. Spend money on me, Josh.
I did.
Oh, nice. Actually, I love my keyboard. Thank you. So that's mostly for the computer side that make sure they have the best environment, and you want them to be able to sit down and start working right away. That gets them the computer. Now we need to go into how do we make sure they have all the access they need.
Yeah.
And this is where it fell off the rails as far as automation that's going to work everywhere. And it starts with a new user comes in, their information is going to be in an HR system, and there's no uniform way that comes out. Some of them might have an API where you can go and do a query. Some of them might have to export it with a CSV, but there's no default where you can have that I can show that says go to your HR system and grab this. That's something you got to work out.
Yeah, so I mean, the rest of this webcast is going to be pretty generic, right? Assuming you're in an Active Directory environment.
Yeah, so most of what you're going to show is going to be based on hybrid because that's what we have.
Yeah.
Our DC's local, but we have Exchange up in Azure.
Yeah, I'm not running an Exchange server on-prem. They're never again. Never.
But it's so much fun. So in my case, for my example, I just have a CSV with Joe Kirkland, who's in Sales Drive, which the department name is ridiculous. I'll get into that in just a bit. Obviously, that's not enough information. We're going to make it work because we're not building out an actual user, but everything you might need, whether it's the geolocation, which you are absolutely going to need if you're using Azure, to any specific information, like if there's a proxy address you have to put in, which I believe for Exchange is required. So all the information you can grab, that's going to vary for everyone. The important thing is if you capture it, then your script that you write, you can just use it for building it out. In this case, this is very, very simple. It's just Joe Kirkland in sales.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to parse that CSV or some other input to be useful information. So,
yeah, I closed VS Code. Let's hope I didn't lose everything, huh?
Part of the fun of doing it live.
Ooh, we got the pets still. Oh, there we go. The pets are still around. Oh, that cat is slow motion falling. All right, the other part that we have to do where we are hybrid, I'm connecting to a domain controller that requires different credentials because my default account, you didn't want to give me domain admin.
Sorry.
Good call. I'm with you on this one. And then as well as we are occasionally connecting out to Azure. So it comes down to if you're going to automate this, you have to get the credentials in automatically. You don't want to ever have to run the credentials. And don't put your password in your script. No.
I've never done that. I promise.
So what I'm doing for this one is there's a secrets management module in PowerShell that allows you to build a vault of passwords. There's a default one for Windows Store where it's stored locally. I'm using KeePass, and there's a module built by Justin Grody that will let you connect to that one. And so that one, all you need is a password that can go in and unlock your secrets vault, and then everything you have in your password manager, you can just call live on the script from this machine.
So you're really only having to pass that master password, and then you can return credential objects based on their short name.
Yep. And
That's
so
cool.
as I went in, I typed in a secure string the password to the KeePass, and then I export it as a CLI XML, which is encrypted with a DP API, which means they have to be on this specific machine logged in with my specific account to encrypt it. If they get on the machine as their own and they go in and steal the file, they still can't decrypt it. It has to be this machine, my account. So the password is secure on this one as long as you don't walk away from your computer.
Gotcha. So it has to be running under your context on this machine to call those things.
Yep. So in this one, I'm just going to go and I'm going to find the XML file, import it as the password, and I'm going to use that password to unlock the vault for KeePass.
Okay.
So now everything I have in KeePass, in my case, there's two things, but everything we have in KeyPass is now available to me. And if this is on the machine that's running it, as long as it's running on that contact, that user, the credentials will always be there.
Okay.
All right. So now that we have that, next part is building the account. Where we're local, it's just the AD tools everyone knows about with PowerShell. The get AD user or new AD user, you go in and build it.
Yeah, and that's because we're hybrid, right? We run things on-prem, but also in Azure AD. So local AD wins over everything. So our source of truth is our local Active Directory.
Okay, yeah. So this is a rule that we found out the hard way. We can build the account here. We absolutely cannot build the mailbox local. We have to build that out there.
Correct.
Azure.
Yeah, there's nothing here to build it against. So the thing that gets fun here, which I think we're going to talk about, is there is a time delay between an account getting created locally in Active Directory and by the time that it gets replicated to Azure AD. So how are you compensating for that in this script, where there's that offset anywhere 15 minutes to an hour-ish, depending on sync time?
Well, first let me real quick build this one.
Oh yeah, you want to build it first? Yeah, why not?
We'll just build it. And in here, I'm specifying the OU, just going there. This is the OU that we have that replicates up to Azure. But
Okay.
The OU is relevant because that will explain how we can build it out. So we're going to build that account real quick. Name provided is not proper for an account name. Did I not delete the old one?
Oopsie.
Let's find out. Oh, can we remove the screen real quick? Thank you.
All this work and time you put into.
And
Well-
the domain controller kicks me out often for good reason.
Yeah, I guess while Jordan's like resetting this here to make sure that it's there, do you have a question?
Sure, we can do a question. It may not be 100% relevant, but is there a convenient way to map network drives to new machines using Deploy? Aaron.
Well, I would say convenient, no, but there is a way. Network drives exist in the user context, not the machine context, where Deploy tends to live. With that being said, you still could use the regular old netuse command. Just make sure that you're running that package as the logged on user. Otherwise, it's going to map the drive for your deploy user, which you probably don't want. The other thing, so you've got this timing issue now where you need to make sure that the drive you're mapping for the user, that user is logged in at the time you run the command. But then just go ahead and use the netuse command to map that drive for them.
All right, and I did find my problem. I didn't import my CSV.
Oh, you do need a CSV.
Yeah, the one we talked about, and last so.
Do you want another question in the meantime?
Oh no, we should be good to go.
Okay, all right.
All right.
All right, so yeah, it just didn't pull in the last time. I wonder if I didn't save it. All right, so and the reason for the OU, this is where we count for the time delay that we have, where you have a couple of options where it's 15 to 50 minutes. In our experience, like group policy, we don't know when it's hitting. So I'm putting it in the OU that is set to replicate out to Azure, and then you can have a second script that follows up after an hour or 2 hours after that says looks at that OU and does the next part where it builds out all the Azure stuff and then moves it to its final resting location OU. Whether it's if you have it separated by departments, great. If not,
Yeah.
So it's there's that one. The other option you have, I'm just not grabbing that field of last. Is why it's not working.
Oh, did you hit tab there under?
Must have done. All right. The other option is you could have it after it builds the account. You could have it do a test where it's just basically a do where it tests to see if the account exists,
Yeah.
and then once it does exist, it comes back, returns, and you can move on to the next stage. And that will just leave the script running in a loop until it does find it.
Cool.
So that's kind of the two options you have there. For me, all of my experience that I had with this kind of automation was all on-prem. So just using the OUs, we were separated by department. It made it easy. I just used that all the time where I'd move it. And I have staging. A new user went into the new user accounts. And then as I had permissions, it moved where I needed to go.
Okay.
So I never had to touch it. That's my preferred one. But if that's something you're not using that or you don't have it separated that way, then just putting in some sort of test and delay in there. And look, I can build an account once I don't tab my variable.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and Kevin's calling out like you can run on the AD sync server the start AD sync cycle, and so you can poke that sync service with a sharp stick to help if you need an account done like right now. But many cases you'll have heard from HR, people ops weeks in advance of a new hire So you can just kind of kick off this account and let it naturally, make its way
Yeah.
into the environment.
And I think we hit the sync when you build my domain account, and it still took, it's like 23, 20 some minutes.
It still took a minute after I kicked it. It also doesn't help that we're syncing, I think, 6 different domains to a single Azure tenant.
Oh, yeah, so we're a little bit different. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of variables on that one. If you're all Azure, then your building there will be fine. And this
Yeah.
one, all right, so this one, now that we have it built, we're going to say it's replicated. I'll just use a different account because that's not going to be replicated yet.
Yep.
For the next part. The next part is assigning permissions. Right here we have one where we assigned the local group the cells, and that's why I named it Cells Drive. Mm-hmm. The security group for the cells was just called for us Cells Drive. Most likely, what you're going to have to do is you're going to want to have some sort of mapping where if they come in, they're in the sales department or some specific department. You're going to have to know, or something in there where it resolves the cells to the name of the security group. If the security group's the name is the job title, fantastic. That makes everything easy. If not, you're going to have mapping in there, a logic where, based on the HR approved title they're given, it maps to the proper security group.
So this is where it comes to like making sure that your data coming in is good. And those are conversations that you have with other back office staff. Like maybe go to your HR department and be like, hey, I want to build this. Let's make sure that what you're calling things matches what I'm calling things in Active Directory. Then as that data comes in, you don't have to do that same manual mapping process. Not always possible, but it's super cool when it works that way.
That is awfully the best when it works ideal.
Yeah.
What I would have run into often is they just invent titles on the fly.
Yeah.
So I'd have all my mapping in place. It's like, well, this person's a Sales 3 Associate 19. It's like, well, I don't have a map for that. But there's things like that you can't control. But in that case, you can have a default, like if none of these have matched, give them the default set of permissions. And then when they don't have it, it explains like, yeah, because this is made up nonsense, give them a real job title.
Nice.
Or maybe don't go to HR aggressively. They don't like it.
Yeah.
They don't like it.
Cool. So we've created our Active Directory user now, and we've got them into some different security groups, whether those are Azure security groups, local security groups, maybe they're synced. So now we got to give them maybe Office licensing, Microsoft 365 licensing.
Absolutely.
Cool.
And the important part is if you build local, they don't have geolocation set by default. So when it creates it up, they're not going to do that. For Office 365 licensing, that is mandatory.
Really?
Yes. So
How'd you learn that?
Trial and error.
Okay.
I got a lot of angry exclamation points.
All right, so you do need to set geolocation per user as part of building this. Okay.
And for this one, I'm using Microsoft Graph. In this case, for the example I'm using the access token. This is only good for about 2 hours. Then it's going to build a new token. It expires.
Okay.
So this won't work for automation. Looks like my token has expired. We're going to go build a new token.
All right.
All right. There are other methods to do this one. I just was doing one that's quick and dirty, and I know I'm supposed to show my token. No one write this down.
No, there's a lot more there.
Yeah,
that,
it'll be gone in 2 hours.
yeah.
All right, we're going to go back in here. We're going to set secret, and I believe I called the access token. And then the secure string. I can't copy paste there. Enter that in there. New access token is built. Now we're going to go and connect.
All right.
So, and that's why where this one expires every 2 hours, but this saves the credentials. There is another method. I didn't do it because I figured if I made massive changes to our production domain in the middle of domain merging, you might kill me.
Yeah.
So what you can do is you can do it with a local certificate. So if you come in, trust me, it's fantastic. So if you come in and you register Microsoft Graph in here, we'll just do new registration.
I love the look on Josh's face of pure terror right now.
And this is why I didn't do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can.
This is why I didn't do it. So you come here, you can register the app. We'll say just Graph. We're going to not add the name Microsoft because I'm a rebel like that.
Okay.
Graph, and it's going to give you an app ID, and it's going to give you basically 2 keys. Where we create it. I'm not going to go live with it, right? The app ID and the object ID. You need those, and then you have to enable the ability to do cert authentication. What you do is you build the cert, and then you upload it into here, and you give it certain permissions. So when that cert's given, you give them.
Okay.
So it's a good way to do role-based for if you don't want them to set the credentials. And that way you send in the application ID, you send in the object ID, and you give them the cert thumbnail.
Okay.
You send that all up there, and that goes without. And that one will remain permanent. And I didn't set that up in our environment because you seem pretty upset about anyone making changes to
I
your
like the
production.
2-hour expiring tokens.
Which is why I had it.
Oh.
But if you're looking for full automation, you can do the cert. If you want to build a cert, where we go, it's just new self-signed cert right here. You're going to want to have a real domain name or you're going to have a bad
For
time.
reals.
And then the friendly name of Graph It Up. So we're going to build that cert, and then we're going to grab it. And that cert, that is the thumbprint. So you send the 2 IDs you can grab from that one. You give that cert thumbprint, and you send those in there. And no need for authenticating at that point. It's
Now
good.
this machine can
This
call
machine.
Microsoft Graph and
Yes.
make changes. Cool.
Yep. So it is a secure way to do it. You just, I figured changing authentication methods at this time might lead to my early demise.
It might.
So that one. So I use the access token for the very reason of your age. But if you're looking for permanent, you can do that, or you can do a request where it returns a bearer token, and you can use the bearer token to send through. There's a couple of options, but the cert's probably the easiest. Access token, real easy if you only need it for a certain time frame.
Yeah. So, okay, so now we're connected to Graph, and now Graph is going to allow us to query and also assign licenses to the user we just created, right?
Yeah. Well, first I'm going to go in and I'm going to set my location just to be safe.
Oh, that's right. Without location, the whole thing's going to get red text and be bad.
So now my location is US. That's the update manager. Now the other one, it comes down to the licenses, where if we go back to our Azure here, we're looking for, boy, I shouldn't have clicked off of it yet.
Up 3.
Licenses,
There you
there
go.
we are. Licenses, all products. These are the licenses that we have that we can share out. One caveat that I found, and I don't know if this is just an access token, if I had more permissions I could do it. If the license permissions we have, the SKU ID comes from a reseller,
Yep.
it's not going to show up in the tenant when you query it with Graph. So if you have a particular set of one that you bought from a reseller, that
Yeah.
one's going to be a little bit more complex. Otherwise, you can just query it with Graph.
Gotcha. So some of the stuff that we bought, like we bought some Dynamics 365 licensing from a reseller. That's why it's not showing up in this.
Yeah, I believe the SPE E5 was the one I'm supposed to use. I can't access that one. I'm using the E3 for my example.
Okay.
So all I'm doing is I'm assigning the variable here. I'm grabbing specifically the SPE E3.
And so these are SKUs. These names don't match the friendly names.
Yeah, the SPE E3 is the friendly name. And then from this, I'm grabbing the SKU ID, which is what I'm not showing
Yep.
because that's what information I'm not supposed to be sharing out.
Yeah, please don't.
We're going to grab that one, and then that's why I have out null, so any output comes in there. And now I've been assigned the SPE E3. So you can have that kind of logic. So if you have SKU based on job title as well, like different permissions, that's where you'd come in here. You would want to say, if they're HR, grab this SKU and add it based on that ID.
Okay.
And that will add all of their Office 365 permissions that they need based on that. And it's a way to do that automated without having to type in passwords, because typing in
Ooh,
passwords sucks.
that's fantastic.
There is another method for that where you don't want to do individual user, where you want to do groups.
Yeah, this is actually my preferred way to do licensing is rather than assign licensing per users, because you can end up with conflicts. I like to assign licensing to security groups, so that just by virtue of a user being in a security group, they're granted a license. Right.
All right, so that one is, we just came to licenses. I checked the one I wanted and I hit assign license. And this is where you can add the groups here. And I just want to show you how bad this search is. I want IT. There is no IT.
Crap.
Okay, well, I want PDQ. Well, there's PDQ IT. So know the name of your group going in. Otherwise, the search is not going to help you out.
Fantastic.
So if I do this one, everyone in PDQ IT is going to get this assigned license. This isn't going to enforce the geolocation. So if you have this in there, someone goes in without that, it's not going to sign. It's going to start throwing up angry emails saying you have this many conflicts.
Yep.
So you still want something in there to make sure the location's added. Otherwise, now everyone in IT will get that E3 permission on that one.
Yep.
And that's just a way you don't worry about individuals, every group. And this is probably a pretty safe idea. If they're in whatever department, they're going to need a similar set of Office software.
Yeah, and I mean, the way that we do it is we build lots of security groups. Like I might have a security group for access to, I don't know, Salesforce. And that works for you. I mean, you're going to have to do that for most SSO applications anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So I can tie licensing to a security group and to tie it to SAML-auth, tie all of those things together.
Right, yeah, and you sent this link over here.
I love this link so much.
So these are apps So these are things outside of Microsoft that we can't necessarily assign right away, but you can say if they have this permission group, when they show up, assign a license automatically.
Yeah, if each of these will be different, and if they support just-in-time provisioning or SCIM, then that's exactly what will happen. Just by virtue of that user doing continue with Office or continue with Microsoft, if they match in their identity, it'll provision them a license. There's just so much less IT overhead.
Yeah, and there's a lot in here. It's a lot of setups. So this is one where we can't automate it on our permissions because it's a SaaS program. You can automate a lot of that. And then we get down to the last part of ones that don't have just-in-time provisioning. We don't have access. That's going to be manual work.
Yeah, I mean, you still got to create it there. It still allows for your users to only have a single set of credentials,
Yes.
which is always fantastic. But, I mean, more and more things to add to this. This is probably one of my favorite Microsoft Docs pages. It's fantastic.
And I get the last part would be at the end of you got everything, you added the permissions, you've done all the signing you can. Last part is send an email to open up a ticket that says this person still needs these permissions, and that's going to have to be manual, which is a bummer. But getting one ticket of please build the account for these 2 random pieces of software is a lot better than doing everything
Yeah,
else.
here's a brand new user. Do all of the things.
Yep. And so with following these, and I know we can't show a lot of the full-on automation, which I wanted to do initially, but this hopefully gets everyone started where they can go in to their environment and
Yep.
at least find if you can find one thing to automate out of this. Onboarding sucks. Removing as much of it as possible is the ideal goal. So hopefully this gets some people started where they can start getting that out of their life.
Hopefully.
Right. Now, do we have any other questions that came in?
Oh, we've got questions. We could just start out with a speed round if you want.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's go ahead and do this thing. Hey guys, what is your take on Microsoft Teams Windows 11 hacked on first day of Pwn to Own? Marcel L.
I'm not surprised. That's not to say that I think Microsoft is as bad as security. They've shown a lot of improvements in areas, but Windows 11 is new. There's a lot that they couldn't account for. I'm not surprised that a conference built around breaking into things targets something like that and is successful at the gate.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of people want to delay the rollout of Windows 11 until things like that occur.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, if you're Microsoft, you have so many backwards compatibilities that you are required to maintain. Like, it's going to be exploited. It just is.
Yeah, that's why Pwn to Own is so valuable. It helps corporations that can't account for all of those things to get ahead of it. So it's at least it's found in a public safe setting instead of a 0 day.
Yeah.
Dear Josh and Jordan, is there a way to set default apps for each user using PDQ Deploy?
So I assume I can do it in PowerShell. I just don't know those commands off the top of my head. And then I don't know if that is system setting or user-based setting.
It can be either. Actually, we covered this in a webcast. It would be a long time ago. It's any of the policy pack webcasts we did. We did kind of a collab with Jeremy Moskowitz. And those are fantastic. And we covered that topic exactly of setting those default app associations.
Yeah. So I would have to look into the PowerShell itself. I just don't know that off the top of my head. But if it can be done with PowerShell, it can be done with deploy. If it's user instance, you want to send it as logged on user. That's not so the new computer's not going to get it. But if it's system instance, you can set a default and then change it per user later. I don't know if you send an email, I'll take a look at that and see if I can find out the PowerShell command for it.
Cool.
Has anyone found a way to download Microsoft's Power BI and deploy it remotely? Thomas T.
Is BI in the Office customization toolkit the builder? I don't
know.
remember.
I don't know on that one. So unfortunately, this is one I haven't messed with. If it is in the builder, then you just have to have your customized file that it reads when you do the push, and it should install with that.
Oh.
I think there was someone in the chat that said they have done this, so it is possible.
Let's see. Chad's asking for that documentation URL for the SaaS app integration.
Yeah.
I will get that. We'll put that down in the description after this is run. I don't know if I have a way to send that over to Kelly to put in the chat right now.
Yeah, I don't think Power BI is in there.
Stephanie has just chimed in. She says Power BI Desktop is where you build reports and dashboards.
Yeah, I didn't remember if it was in the Office customization tool or not. It doesn't look like it is off of a quick scan in about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And someone says that Power BI has a silent install switch. If that case, it should be pretty
Slam dunk.
straightforward. I just don't know if there's a lot of customization that goes on top of that. So it looks like it is possible. I've seen a couple people said they have done it. I haven't looked into it to give a great answer for it.
Hey, Josh and Jordan, when you automate everything, how do you make sure that in the future someone will know or remember how it works if it needs a change? Marcel L.
Document your process, comment in your script. I think comments are not as popular as they once were just because documentation is considered more important. But if you're building all this out as a module or a function, you can have the help documentation right in there where they can do get-help for it. If it's not a module, but you're just running custom scripts you built, just document everything that's in there.
One of the things that I have done in the past is, especially when my scripts either create tickets or send external communication, including that communication, hey, this came from, and then maybe the originating machine and also the name of the script. So if I got hit by a bus tomorrow and that notification fired, it was like, hey, this notification came from over here. That's the process that's calling it.
Yeah. Also, putting those scripts up in GitHub so you have a history. So if something does break, you know nothing's changed on our side, what changed over here, or if someone pushed out a change, you can track it to make it easier.
Yep.
And also, if it's in Git, that's a great place to have the documentation as well.
Yep.
Hey, Josh. Hey, Jordan. Is Smart Deploy included with my license? Matt M.
That is its own license. I don't know enough about the licensing to weigh in on.
Yep. I'd encourage you to reach out to Sales Now, but it is not included. Smart Deploy is a fantastic product. I think it's probably my favorite imaging tool that I have ever used.
I think you were looking to implement it before we bought them.
I was. We were going to implement it before that was even a thing. Just the ability to separate the operating system stack from a driver stack on a single image was huge. And, you can do it in MDT, but it's not nearly as streamlined and effective.
Is that what happened? Is you went to buy licensing and instead you bought corporation?
No, I would never.
It's like, I liked it so much, I bought the company.
Oops, I clicked the wrong button.
There's purchase a license or purchase the company. Yeah.
They're right next to each other.
Yeah. Gentlemen, is there a way to unpin old Office 2013 items from the taskbar and then pin new Office 2016-2019 items using PDQ after an upgrade? Sincerely, Manchester Didfield and M.
So starting in 10, Windows took the Linux approach of the user space is sacred. So things like the taskbar for the individual one, it's not impossible, but it is by design not easy to make those kind of changes. I believe there are registry keys you can do to make those kind of changes, but they did it on purpose. They wanted to be the user space is sacred, so things like that, they make it very difficult to mess
Yeah, I mean, you can get into HKey current user, but don't. Please.
I think if the uninstall user-based Firefox, that loads all unused registry hives. So, I mean, technically, whether you're in there or not, you can, but it's just...
Don't.
Yeah, it's by design that they made it very difficult, and you can make it work, but you're risking a lot.
Yeah.
They don't want... I kind of appreciate the took the Linux approach on that, but as a sysadmin, sometimes it's like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, setting it as the default is easier, but once you've got a profile loaded, then it becomes difficult.
Yeah.
All right, 3 questions remaining. WebEx updates seem to have failed to install the old version. PCs are now showing 2 versions installed. The uninstaller doesn't work, nor does trying to uninstall from the app list. Help! Sincerely, Dougie Doug K.
Would you mind opening the ticket?
Yeah,
with us?
there's too much.
That's a big deal if it's happening for across the board. If it's a one-off, we're still happy to help. But if it's happening across the board, we need to know. So we need either change our packaging, but either way, open a ticket with support@pdq.com, and we'll help you with that.
Yeah.
Hey Josh and Jordan, I have a specific look and feel for user taskbars and start menus. How can that be done as a template? The old copy profile worked fine. Office 365 deployment doesn't even put icons on the taskbar. Sincerely, the talented Christina G.
So the taskbar goes back to the same one where they consider saying it. You're saying initially, before anyone's logged in, you
Yes.
can set a default where you can get your look and feel, but if Office 365 is not doing that, you're going to have to get that set up.
It is group policy. You're going to dig a group policy, and you have to supply an XML file that basically says this is what it should be. And then when a new profile is loaded in the system, it pulls from that XML and sets it that way. Now, once that profile is up and that user is logged in, now it's sacred space, and you're not going to touch it very easily.
Yeah, so catching it early with the XML, you can probably get a lot of your customization, but once it's there,
And I don't recall if that actual group policy is tied to education and enterprise SKUs. It might be of Windows. I don't remember, though.
And our final question of the day, can you create a collection that shows machines that haven't ran a particular scan successfully in 7 days? Daniel,
Hey, I think we can actually show that one.
yeah. So we do capture in, I believe, inventory all the scans that have run recently, and if it's in a table in our system, you can build
Yep.
a collection based on it. Is it scans? So we
Yep.
have this table here. These are scans. I don't know what the history of this one is.
So you got a successful scan date. So if we're just looking at like machines that haven't scanned in 7 days, we could say
There's attempted scan date for that.
there's also successful next to it.
Yep.
Yep. So we could build a collection.
Yeah. This. Are we going to try it live?
Let's do it live. Why not?
I just don't know where to find the table off the top of my head.
I think I can do it.
You're going to take over?
I think I can do it.
I'm going to say, what's the worst that can happen?
All right, new dynamic collection. Let's see.
Where is that table?
We're going to return all computers where not any computer. I think it's successful scan.
Is there a
Successful scan date is before a relative date. Let's say 7 days ago.
So that's for the scan date, but he wants to specify a certain scan. Can you give a scan name in there?
Let's find out. Computer. Is it going to be scans? We got scan user, scan error,
Ooh, we may have stumped ourselves.
scans, profile, contains, or let's say it's like equals standard. Let's just call it standard because I know that exists.
And should that be under not any, or should that be outside of that? So we want to say scan equals and then a not
Yeah.
any.
All scan profile equals that, and there were not any computer successful
So
scan
yeah,
bait.
look at the standard scan that was not successful the first 7 days ago.
Yep.
That may require some tinkering, but that's a good starting point either way.
Yep.
Nice job on finding the tables. That's awesome. You did it.
I did it.
All right. Any more questions? Or?
there you go. That's it.
All right. Hey, thanks everyone for tuning in. Like I said, for onboarding, unfortunately, there is no instant solution, but hopefully this gets you started. And if you can remove one task from your plate, I think it's been
Do
successful.
it. Absolutely.
For PDQ.com, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Josh.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. Congratulations, Christina G. and Aaron, or Aaron, winners of PDQ swag. Send us your info at webcast@pdq.com. And if you wouldn't mind, could you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel? That would make us all very happy. Have a fantastic week. We'll see you back here next time.